We are pulling back sharply in Stellar Lumens, and we are nearing lower support, but that is no reason to panic because there is epic upside ahead in the longer term. So this is the time to start thinking about getting your buying plans ready and keeping on your toes because we've got a setup that might take us sky high, which we're going to go over later in this video. This is our 1/over short-term chart, linear chart, and well, it's looking like this red pattern is the pattern in operation. The red pattern was calling for a lower low and has been our primary. So you can see that we have an A, B, and a C. And the reason that I don't see us having, well, the reason I don't think we're going to have that fifth wave up is because we've already cut back so low that, well, if you draw a diagonal trend channel, well, our fifth wave would have to go colossally high, which is looking very unlikely. We are almost back to the origin of this rally, and therefore our support will remain where we were, right around 169 or 0.169. I'm actually going to color that red just to clarify that. So when we look at our internal structures, it does look like an A, very wiggly looking B wave down, and this C wave looks like a C wave. It could subdivide into an impulse. And so far, we may have a first wave down, or maybe this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, and maybe we're about to have a bounce for a second wave, which could give us a setup to the downside. If we measure, if we count it, this could be our 1, 2 as such. And if that's the case, could have a downside target of anywhere from 0.135 to 0.123. Otherwise, maybe the bottom of the first wave down is down here, and we're about to have a bit deeper of a retrace. So we're going to have to see how this thing develops over the next few days. We're seeing similar action equities as well, where we've pulled down very sharply. And, well, we may be in a bit of a consolidation. We're going to see what happens. That 0.135 region does actually fall pretty close to this box. It doesn't quite project as low as the peach box. So possibly we're going to bounce a little bit over the next few days for a second wave. Regardless, this is the big picture logarithmic chart, daily chart. And of course, this is pasted in the description below. So check that out if you'd like to follow along. Our red is still primary. Our green was assuming that we are done with the correction and that we are about to rally up higher. We had some promise of seeing that. Well, we had a pretty good blow off right there. Got all the way up to about 25 cents before we have pulled back sharply. And the story is much the same across pretty much every crypto. There's a few cryptos that have had 5 waves up in what I'm calling a leading diagonal. We have no such setup in XLM, Stellar Lumens. So my best guess is that we're going a bit lower. I'm going to break that support. As I mentioned on the short-term picture, 0.169 is the support. Here I got about 0.199. It's just a matter of resolution here. So right in that range, right under 20 cents is the support. If we break that, very good chance we're going to fall into this pink peach box, whatever color that is. And there's confluence there as we went over in our last update. If this is our A wave and our B wave, the C being equal to A would get us to the very top of that pink box. That is actually how I determined where we would fall for the pink box. And we'd also fall in there for the 61% retrace of this entire first wave. So multiple confluence there. Very good setup to fall down there. In the small picture in here, depending on where the B wave actually starts up, I'm going to assume that the B wave is here because this peak is a little bit higher than the peak back here. In that case, maybe we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I actually draw our fib extension tool based on that assumption, that's our first wave down, and they have a bounce up. That first wave down is the crash that we saw around December 3rd or so. And if that's the case, well, actually, I'm going to bring the retrace down to here. If that is the case, we do project right in that box. That 0.112 would be your minimum downside target, and our max downside target falls right in that box. So multiple levels of confluence. And as I mentioned before, this is going to be a great buying opportunity because, as I've been mentioning in all my other videos, we are much closer to a bottom than we are to a top. Our rally top so far has been around 80 cents. We are well below that. We lost about, what, 3/4 of our value. And, well, while there is some downside left, we could lose another 50%, but we're already very close to that box, the big picture. And if you're a long-term investor, there's much excitement. Now, before I move to the upside targets and the historic structure, I would like to note that if we do see any kind of 5-wave bounce up, that would be an indication that we're done with the crash and then maybe time to start buying. In the short term, if we do hit that peach box, our first subwave, which is marked in red here in the blue box, would get us somewhere around, was that 35 cents to about 80 cents, right in that range. Those are just standard targets based on a pullback to the top of that peach box and then standard subwave 1 expectations. If that is the case, we would go from about 10 cents all the way up to 35 cents to 80 cents. So 3 to 8x return just on that subwave 1 alone. So very exciting. Big picture, what have we got? Well, the pattern looks a lot like what we see in EOS and some other cryptos, other young-ish altcoins in which we actually have a large nested 1-2-1-2 setup. And as with some of the other altcoins, we don't have as much history as Bitcoin or Ethereum, although this one does actually have history going all the way back to 2014. So we can be a bit more confident about this pattern. I'm relatively confident that this here is a major wave 1 peak, as you see notated in blue, and that we have a clear bottom here. Unlike with Bitcoin and most other cryptos, we didn't have a double bottom that formed over between 2019 and 2020. We have just the one bottom. So this is confidently, in my opinion, a wave 2, major degree wave 2. And I'm actually going to clear these drawings for just a second. If that's the 1 and that's the 2, this would be your nested 1-2. And as I mentioned, this thing looks a little funky. It doesn't look like a standard impulse wave because Well, it looks like an A, B, C. You could easily interpret this as an A, B, C up, and therefore we have this third alternate, the blue pattern, which would have us topping right around 98 cents before pulling back. That would be bad because we wouldn't immediately accelerate to the upside. However, it would mean that we have a larger first wave that would still fall within the standard expectations of a small degree first wave. So right now, this is a distant third alternative. I don't see that as being a high probability at the moment. So moving on, assuming we are either going red or green, we've had our first wave. So we do have our nested setup. Again, that means that we have a 5-wave impulse up, 3-wave impulse down. That's a major 1-2. And then you have a 1-2 setup in the lower degree. And what we would be looking for is a smaller degree 1-2. And that is what your Roman numeral 1 and 2 here represent. That would be a triple nested setup. Now, I know the other day I mentioned we have a triple nested setup in Polkadot. That's pretty crazy to have that many. We may get that. The reason why it's exciting is because once you have the nested setup, that means you have the third wave of the third wave of a larger third wave. So it'll be basically the heart of a third wave. Third wave of a third wave, maybe of a larger third wave. So rocket blast would be the good way to go. If we do end up following that pattern, where will we end up? Well, our standard expectations are, of course, after you hit between these targets, your third wave would fall between the 1.0 and the 1.236 extension of this larger pattern. And well, those would fall between $20 and $96. So we'd be going from cents to multiple dozens of dollars if the setup comes to fruition as we think it will. So if I build out my extensions, where does that put us? That's a hell of a return. So you might be thinking I'm smoking something. Trust me, I'm not smoking anything. It's just a little bit of black tea. So that's what the numbers show. That's the excitement. It is a buying opportunity. Time to be greedy when others are fearful, and have your buying plans ready. If you like XLM, Stellar Lumens, buy a bunch of other cryptos too, because while this is a 1-2-1-2 setup, there's always a risk inherent, especially with the lower history, maybe with the non-standard looking patterns. And in addition, the other thing I'd like to point out is that while with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Dash, some of the older cryptos, this is actually a third wave peak. So it's a major third. The problem here, the risk, is that when you look at this big picture long-term, I just really butchered that whole thing. It's not clear because we don't have any history. The sentiment this could have been the first wave peak back here. So because right around here, it's actually a little early, but our first wave for something like Ethereum or Bitcoin was a couple years before. Actually, I'm going to shift back to Bitcoin real quick just to get an idea of where I have my first wave. November 2013. So shifting back to XLM, November 2013, we'll fall a little further back. So it's not clear if hypothetically we had a first wave and a second wave and sentiment back here. So there is that risk that this is actually a third wave peak, and it's not the super uber bullish 1-2-1-2 setup we have. Nothing to fret about though, because even if that is a third wave, we'd be entering the third wave of fifth wave, which can be just as explosive, especially in cryptos and commodities. Oftentimes the fifth wave is the most powerful. And when you look at the logarithmic chart, the upside is pretty insane. So a lot of excitement ahead. I'm going to be releasing a video showing a system of indices, like some index numbers to assess risk and reward for these different cryptos. So stay tuned for that and subscribe so you don't miss any updates, because we're going to have some crazy buy alerts going off. I suspect within a few weeks. So get ready for that. And if you enjoyed my video, don't forget to give me a like. Till next time, thank you for watching and happy trading.